Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for our presentation today, Foundations of Reporting in Applied Epic. My name is Eleni Lepo, and I'm the Marketing and Event Coordinator here at Kite Tech. It's exciting to see so many familiar names from previous sessions joining us again today. For those of you joining us for the first time, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for spending time with us today. Also here with me today is our presenter, Lauren Tripp. Lauren's our senior agency consultant here at Kite Tech, and she's joining us from North Carolina. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to you, Lauren, and see you all a little bit later for questions. Lauren, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Eleni. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Again, as Eleni said, we are obviously doing quite a few virtual meetings nowadays, so it's nice that we can get connected from across the country at wherever location you may be. I suppose I should say good morning or afternoon, depending on what your location is. I am a senior agency consultant for our Kite Technology Group Agency Consulting Division. As Eleni mentioned, we do have some background in insurance. I actually worked with insurance agencies in the past. The last agency that I worked for several years ago, I actually assisted in the Epic migration from TAM to Epic. So I have worked a lot in agencies, on the agency side and commercial lines, accounting background as well, and also life and health I did dabble in a little bit. So that's a little bit about my background as far as what we do as a consulting team. We do work again in optimizing Epic for agencies that have been on Epic for quite a while. We also assist agencies that are migrating to Applied Epic, maybe from AMS 360 or TAM or whatever their previous agency management system is. There are lots of other things that we do, workflow management and development and employee auditing, lots of things on the list. I won't bore you with that, but today what we're going to be talking about is reporting. So let's jump right on in and see what we have on our learning objectives for today. So today we're going to talk about some reports for different situations in Applied Epic. I'm also going to show you basically how to use and add criteria to a report. I will be providing some tips and tricks for report layout as well. I'm sure all of you are excited to learn more about report layout. And then also I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to schedule and manage report delivery, because there are a lot of options for automation in your reports in Epic. Okay. So we're going to start with the basics. Obviously, based on the title of this webinar, you know that this is the foundations of reporting in Epic. So I am going to be looking at this at a very basic level. Of course, if you have questions throughout the presentation, I'm going to try to grab those as soon as I see them, because normally they are based on what I talk about during the session. So I'll try to grab those as soon as I can as we go throughout the training. All right, so the first section I want to talk about is your My Reports section. So when you open Epic Reports and Marketing, this is the area that you'll always come to first. This is your list of customized reports that you have created for your agency or for your own use. In that My Reports section, you're going to list all reports maybe that you have scheduled, reports that you're going to run on a regular basis, and this is really where you want to place anything that has been customized. Now there's also the Main Reports section, and in that section you'll have different areas of reports based on the report data that's pulled in Epic. So each one of these areas are your main report sections. We have account, activity, applications, claim, client contacts, etc. So each one of those areas of reports have reports that are specific to those fields in Epic. So what I mean by that is I can look at a policy report and I'm going to pull information that would be on the policy screens in Epic. Those things like estimated premium and commission, policy types, those are information in the data fields on a policy screen. Now, an activities report or an activity-based report is going to have a different set of fields. You're going to have things like the amount field in the activity, your activity description, activity codes. Those are fields that are data fields in an activity report. So it's important to understand the difference in these areas of reports because you cannot combine that information. So if you're trying to run a report and gather information maybe that's in a non-pay activity with information that's on the transactions, you won't be able to do that because of the way the main report sections are set up in Epic. Now, the main report section is where you will start your reports from. So this is generally, and I'm going to navigate back and forth between Epic and the presentation a little bit. So this is generally where you're going to start those reports from. You might go to policy, and maybe you want to start a report based off of the Book of Business Policy book. What you're going to want to do is copy that report over to your My Reports. We highly encourage you to not work on reports that are in your main report section so that you maintain the integrity of the default information on the report. So this is very important because the report is set up with certain defaults, certain default criteria, as well as the default layout. And you always want to be able to go back to that original so that you can make a copy and again, work from that original report. So you'll notice here that this says this is the default report. I do have some other ones that are not so default because I've used this for examples in here. But anytime you want to make a modification to that report, maybe you want to change the sort, you want to change the layout, you want to add criteria to the report, take that report over into your My Reports. Okay, so when we copy to your My Reports, you'll just select that button here at the top to copy that over, and then you can finish and then come into your My Reports section to work on that report. Now you'll notice that I have several reports listed in my Reports that are all very detailed descriptions. So some other things you want to do when you are copying reports over and you're working on them in Epic in your My Reports section is make sure that you have an accurate description. That description is what's going to help you obviously go back and run the same report. It's also very beneficial when you schedule reports. So when we talk about scheduling reports a little bit later, it's very helpful to see what's in the report that's actually going out. For example, if I had expiration report for 10 different people and they're all labeled expiration report, it's going to be kind of hard to drill down and see who's getting what expiration report. So you want to make sure that, when you're scheduling reports and things like that, label it so that you can see not only in this section in your My Reports what's in the report, but also for those scheduled reports that you have set up to go out automatically. Okay, some other tips and good things to do here in your My Reports is add a description of your report. So for example, I could not add a description, but add some comments about your report. So I can go here and right click on overdue activities, or I can click actions from the top, either one of those options here. And I can edit the report name and comments. Okay, so here we have just a standard description that comes with the Epic default report, basically telling us what this report should be used for. If I don't like this standard because I've already modified this report, I might back that out and say, use this report to see who has overdue activities. And some other things that we like to add to the comments of the reports is things like how is it sorted? Or is it department specific? So, you might be able to say sorted by CSR. So anything that can help you, especially if you have a lot of reports set up over time, you're going to have quite a few in your My Reports section. Anything that can help you understand what's in that report, put it here in the description of the report as well as in the comments. Okay. Now, in addition to that, another pro tip for you, best practice, we also recommend put a copy back into your main report section. So what I mean by that is if you have a report that you've set up, and this is how your agency is going to run this report going forward. Maybe it's an expiration report sorted by CSR. If you're going to use that in the future, and maybe you need to set it up for an additional CSR when you have new employees, you want other people to be able to access those reports. So we recommend adding a copy of the report back in the main report section. So what that looks like is I would go over here to my reports, and maybe I want to use this report again in the future. I want other people in the agency to have access to it. I would do copy report to, and I would choose that main group policy section. Okay, so when I do that, now when I go down to policy, you'll see at the very top, I have this description entered with a little symbol in front of it to kind of note that this is our custom report for the agency. But now other people can come into this main policy area, anyone that has access to reports, and they can copy this over there, my reports, and use it as well. Okay, this is very beneficial. And I mentioned I used to work in an agency, but when I left, a lot of reports were in my reports, and they had to reactivate my user code so that they could get those my reports into other folks' systems. So this is one reason why it's really important to make sure you have a copy if it's going to be an agency standard kind of report. Okay, because you're the only one that has access to your My Reports. No one else can see what's in your My Report section. Okay. All right, so let's jump on into your criteria and layout. So I'm going to go over a few things again briefly in the presentation, but I'm probably going to show you a lot more in Epic than anything else for this area. So the first thing I want to do is talk about what's the difference in criteria versus layout. Okay, so criteria is going to be the way that you filter the information so that you see what you want to see on the report. Okay, so this is where you tell it you only want to see a certain department. You only want to see a certain CSR or a certain producer. That's the information that is included in the criteria. The layout is going to provide you with the data fields. So just because something is in the criteria doesn't necessarily mean it's going to show up on the layout. So I know that can be kind of confusing, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. But you want to make sure that you understand that criteria is how you filter, but layout is the data fields and the sorting. So you could certainly filter out by CSR in the criteria. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the CSR field in your layout. It's helpful for sure, but just so you know, that's how that's going to work. You don't necessarily have to have that field in the layout. Okay, so what I mean by that is if I go over here to one of the reports in my reports, and we'll just take this book of business policy book for example, because this is a canned report in Epic. I can actually add criteria with the add button up here at the top. Okay, and I might go in here and look for the client service rep, client service manager, and I can add those in at the end of my criteria. Now, if I want a certain person, I could just pull everybody up here and then just pull Tracy down into the list. Now, when I do that and I click a print preview, it's going to show me if Tracy is on any accounts, only the accounts that she's listed on. And it looks like she has no accounts at all. But on that print preview, and I'm sorry, I closed that out too quickly, there is not a field that shows the CSR. So what I was trying to show you there is that I added the criteria to the criteria and I filtered it out, but there is no field here listed for the CSR. So I don't have to have it in both places to be able to filter. Now, if I wanted to add the CSR on the layout, then I could certainly do that by going into the complete detail and adding that information. Okay, so if I go into the layout, and I can either double click on the complete detail or click the pencil to edit. You have the two options there. When I get into the complete detail, then I'd go find the CSR in the book of business policy book and servicing roles. And I could pull that client service rep in. Now, one thing, and this is a tip to remember. Don't pull servicing role over because it's just going to show client service rep. So that's one little trick they get you on in these layouts. You're trying to get somebody's name or their client code, and that's just not what it is. So you want to be careful with your data fields. Make sure you pull the right one in. But if I wanted to have the CSR on this report, and this is something that you're going to have to do very commonly with your reports if you want to sort by CSR, you can take their name or code, you click and hold that and drag it down into the major sort at the bottom of the screen and drop it in there. Okay, so that's how I would get the CSR to be on this report. Now I do have an additional sort here, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about the sorts, but you can move those around so that you have different sorts in this area. Okay, now that I have added that field to this report, I've added the sort on there, I'd be able to run this report and also see the CSR's name in addition to seeing it in the criteria that I filtered out. Okay, I'm going to close that. We'll dig into that layout a lot more in detail in just a few minutes. Okay, in addition to that, so just a couple other things I want you to keep in mind about the criteria. Anything above the parameter page line cannot be removed. So you'll notice in your criteria section here that there is a little X to delete under the add button. So you can delete criteria, but you can only delete criteria that you've added. So they got you there. you can only take out anything under the parameter page. Anything above that is going to be a required type of criteria. Okay. The criteria information also is based on those data fields. So keep that in mind, and I'll probably continue to remind you that as we go through the session. The criteria and the data fields are only available based on that main report section that you're in. So you're only going to get those policies fields, only going to get those activity fields on those type of reports. Okay. All right, moving on. I promised that we would talk about layouts and layout shortcuts. So I see folks struggle all the time with, moving around data fields in a report, but there are lots of great little shortcuts that once you get used to using them, can really speed up your layout use in Epic. So there are a few up at the top. I do have them highlighted here. They are basically using the tools up here at the top are going to be used for aligning, making things the same size, change your spacing, and center. I don't know about you, but when I first started doing reports a long time ago, I was just moving things around and I'm trying to line it up just right, and maybe that's right. And then I preview, and you don't have to do any of that. So going forward, you're going to know how to use these layout shortcuts. So let's jump right into the layout of this report. I'm actually going to use an expiration report because I know those are a pretty standard report that everybody's going to use. So we're going to go back over into policy, and I am going to select the expiration report here. Okay, so I am going to actions and copy that report to my reports. And we'll put a little star in front of this one because this is the one I'm working on today. All right. And Melissa has a great question. She says, how do you activate the edit bar? You will need to select something before those options will show up. So when we get into this report, I just double click to open that. And I click on the layouts and I double click on all policies. Then we'll get into this area. So what she's pointing to is that all of the buttons right now are grayed out. Okay, so right now it looks like you can't use anything. That's not very helpful, right? So you do need to select certain items so that you can use that edit bar. So what we would do in this case is I'm going to actually move around and add some things. So maybe I don't really need the broker. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to hold my control key on my keyboard, and I'm going to select the data field underneath as well. So I've selected the header and the data field, okay? And I'm just going to delete them. I'm going to click delete on my keyboard because I don't want those on this report right now. Instead, I want to see, let's see, let's look at the PPE instead because I have the ICO over here, okay? But I want to actually have the PPE on this report. So I'm going to go over here into my data, okay? And I'm going to go into the policy. And one thing to keep in mind, and I want to show you this, is when you're looking for data fields in your reports, it's also important to kind of know where those fields are at in Epic. So if you're happen to be a reports administrator and you can't find some information, you can open up a client or a policy and kind of navigate through those fields, look to see where it's at there, and then you can come back over here to your data fields and go to the specific section that you found that data field in. So for this example, you might think, well, the policy should be where I'd find the PPE. But in this case, we're actually going to find the PPE under the line level. Okay, so you'll see this down in the bottom. And in this case, I'm going to choose the premium payable code. Also keep in mind, the descriptions of the data fields are very important too. So you always want to print preview something before you run a big report. So I'm going to, you have two options here. You can either drag this over, so I can click and hold it and drag it over, or with it highlighted here, I can just click in this section and it'll pop right on in. Okay, so now two things happened. First off, I got a header that came with my data field. And so you'll notice that sometimes they'll hide behind fields that you already have on your screen at the top. So sometimes you might have to move this around a little bit to pull out that data or that header. So we want to put the header where it belongs, and we need to line up that PPE. So what I'm going to do is I am going to highlight this field right here because I want the bottom to line up with this field. I'll highlight this one first, highlight the right one first, hold your control key and click on the other field that's up here. When I do that, that activates those buttons that we were looking at earlier. Okay, so now if I highlight, it kind of hover over some of the buttons, they'll tell you what they do. We're going to look at a couple of different ones today, but if I hover over this one, it's align bottoms. So when I do that, it brings that header down to where it's supposed to be aligned with the other headers that are on the list. Okay. Now, I probably want to move it over a little bit because I don't have a lot of room right here in between these two. So you can click out of that space. So when they're both highlighted, click off into the white space somewhere to deselect everything. And then you can move these around as needed. So you do have to kind of drag and drop a little bit to get where you want to be, but I would drag this over just a little so I've got some space in between my producer code. And then you can also align with align the data fields, and then you can align with the header. Okay, so what I would do is I'd take one of the existing data fields and highlight that one first, control, and highlight both of those items and tell it to align at the top because it looks like everything's lined up at the top. And then I would click this one, the premium payable code data field, and also highlight the header to make sure they're aligned at the left. Okay, so everything's pretty in line now, but you also see that the font here is quite a bit larger and different than the other fonts. So in order to update that information, what I'm probably going to do is see what else is in the other fields. So let's highlight one of the other fields and look down here in the bottom left-hand corner at your format fields. Okay, so here is where we're going to do things like change the font style, change the font size. We can do alignment. This is where you're going to deal with page breaks and things like that. So here is where I'm going to address that sizing issue. So I see here that this one's Tahoma 8.25. And so I'm going to need to make that match. So I'll highlight the incorrect block, and I'm going to come down here to font, and you'll notice that three little tiny buttons pop up, or three little tiny dots pop up in a little square. That's the button that you need to click to be able to open up the font window. Okay, so it looks like we had, it was Tahoma, and that pulls that in, and then it was 8.25. I will tell you, it's always going to be a point something. If you type in or select the whole number, it will figure out the decimals for you after you selected that. So it's always, Epic is always going to, or the report's layout's always going to change that up a little bit. So you don't need to type in 8.25, just type the number that's closest to it. Okay. So now it looks like everything is good. You know what though? I really don't need it to say premium payable code. Let's change that. Again, down in the bottom left-hand corner, we can change that text in the text spot. So I'm going to click on premium payable code, and it gives me a little access button. So I'm going to click in that arrow, just back that out and call it PPE. Okay. And so now we have the field aligned, the data field is entered, it's lined up with everything down here. And again, that's because we selected a field that's correct and then aligned to that. Then we selected this field that was correct and aligned the header to that. Okay. You can also, another neat trick is to make things the same size. So a lot of times when I'm entering headers, especially things like the PPE or the ICO, lookup codes and producer codes, some of those are going to need to kind of be the same size. So if I already have a producer code entered, and then I add a broker code, I'm probably going to just try to make those the same size. And so here's what I would do to do that. So PPE and ICO are going to be about the same size. So I'm going to highlight the ICO code first, or the ICO header, and then I'm going to control and click on the PPE. Now I'm going to make those the same size. With this option right up here, it looks like a little square. Again, if you hover, it will tell you what the button will do for you. Okay, but now they're not lined. They're not lined up anymore. So I can keep them clicked and just click Align Bottoms. And now my ICO and my PPE headers are the same size. Okay. All right, some other things that you can do in these areas. Of course, again, the only way that you can make those edit options show up at the top is you do have to have two items selected at one time, and then you can make those either the same height, the same size. You can align the bottom, the left, the middle, lots of different options that are available there. All right. And good question. I see a question that is asking if we will review how to add a logo. The question is, or mention is, when I add ours, it's distorted. I do not have anything in the presentation today about how to add a logo, but if you want to reach out to us directly, we can probably help you out with that. Okay. Good question, though. All right, so in the other fields in here that are really important to understand and know are going to be things like totals, okay? So when you add anything that has a numerical value, or it's a sum or something like that, you need to take a look at your format fields, okay? So for example, if I highlight this policy premium annualized, okay, and I look over here on the left-hand side in my font in my format fields, I need to make sure that the format is currency and it's numeric. So anytime you add a number, normally it's just going to show up as a number. So when you run your report, you're looking at it and you're kind of like, that's not what I needed. So you definitely want that to come in as currency. So when you click the little button beside that, you just come here and select currency numeric and click OK. The decimal places and the leading zeros pull in for you. Obviously, you can change those as well if you need to. The second thing that'll get you when it comes to numbers and totals and things like that are going to be the very bottom, and I'll highlight over this total policy premium annualized, the very bottom of your format field section, you will get, oh, and this one's not actually a true sum. Let's see if we've got one that's a true sum entered. We don't have one, so let's make one. All right, let's go to Insert. This will take us into our next option here, which is total field. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can add a total here so you can see what that looks like. Total fields are very helpful in every area, in a lot of areas of the reports, things like your book of business reports, expiration reports, transaction reports. And as you change fields, so if you wanted to switch from annualized to estimated, you're going to need to make sure that you update that total field as well. You can copy total fields and then modify them, or you can just start from scratch and add your own total field. Total fields are not scary at all. It's very simple. So when you go over here to Insert and you select Total, you can just drag that over to where you want it to go. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of squeeze it in right here. And we're going to pull in a total number of policies. Let's go with that. So basically when you're creating the total, you're going to do that down here in the bottom left-hand corner in that format field section. Okay, so the first thing you'll see is that format. Let's, if that was going to be a currency, you would make sure that's changed to currency numeric. You've got things like your horizontal alignment. If you want that to be right or left, you can certainly make a change to that here as well. So then what you need to do is select the total field. So where it says total field, you'll click there and click the little 3 dots again. And you're going to select that total field from the report. So if I wanted to add up the total number of policies on this report, I might add it up by policy number. So I can go in here and select policy and that participation policy number that you see right here, and I could count how many policies I have by that policy number. Okay, so now we have a total field. We have the field that it's going to add up for us, but at the bottom, this is another one of those that gets you. It says count, average, or sum. Okay, so anytime you are wanting a sum or a total amount for premium or commission or dollar amount like that, you want to make sure you select sum because it will always default to count. So you'll get to the end of your report and it might say 111. Well, there's not $111 because that's more than that's less than the first policy on the list. So you want to make sure that that this one doesn't catch you, and you go in here and make sure you update the total type to a sum so that it actually adds all that information up for you. Okay. All right. So in addition to that, some other things that I want to point out to you on the report layout. You also have different footers. So I'm going to get rid of that little box that I just added. I just highlight it and delete it. Nothing else I need to do with that one. But you have different sections of the report based on your sorting methods. So I mentioned earlier that a lot of times you'll need to add a sort to your reports for things like maybe the CSR or the producer. And so this is how you're going to do that with a major sort. So down here in the bottom right now, I have no major sort. So right now it's just sorting by the minor sort over on the right-hand side, which is account lookup code and line expiration date. First thing I want to do is change it to line expiration date because I'm looking at this report by dates, not by the lookup code. So that's one thing that I notice on the expiration report anytime anyone needs help with those. So you'll put that at the top here as your minor sort preference. Okay, so in order to add a major sort, you want to decide what you want to sort by and then find the data field over on the left-hand side. Okay, so we're going to start back at the beginning on this one. I'm going to start from expiration report, and I'm going to go into that servicing roles and select my client service rep. Okay, now here's where you've got to make a decision. And I like to get a little fancy on these too, but I'll show you what I mean. Here's where you need to make a decision. Do you want to sort by code or by name? A lot of times folks like to see a full name listed there, but I'm going to show you a trick for getting both. So if you sort by name, okay, so you put that person's name in there, that's going to give you a new section of your report. Okay, so you need to address this section, make sure it looks good, make sure there's enough space, you like the font, you like the colors, all that good stuff. So what we're going to do in this one is I've sorted by name now. I'm gonna need to make this field a little bit bigger because nobody's name is going to fit in that section. So you can just click and drag that field out a little bit. And instead of it saying name, I'd like for it to say whose code it is. So you can actually just get rid of that and take that data field for the lookup code for the employee. Probably move this over just a little bit. Oh, and there is an edit undo. Very important to know you have an edit undo. So I'm going to take that code and I'm going to add it right beside the name. Okay, and maybe I want to make that a little bit bigger. Okay, and I'm just going to move that right over, and I'm probably going to just line it up with that field below. No need for me to drag it around and figure out where it needs to go. Maybe I want to make these the same height, so I start with the name, highlight the code, make them the same height. Okay, a couple of different options there. So now when I run this report, let's just move that over a little bit, I'll get not only the employee's name or the CSR's name, but now it's also going to give me the code. So you can actually get rid of whatever that label is and toss in the code if you like. That's my little extra on my reports when I'm creating them. Now, another great idea is to use colors, especially when you have a lot of information. You can use colors to kind of separate the information on the report. So for example, and let's make sure we have the same font so these guys look all the same. Let's use that Tahoma again and put that in size 8. Perfect. So these guys are the same size. You can also format and make them bold if you want to. But down in the bottom, I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but it says black right here. You can click on that, use the little drop down. And when you do that, you can scroll through all of the different beautiful colors. Now, most common color that I use is blue, and you can even just type blue into the field if you want to, but it's normally a good color to kind of provide some separation. You can also, like I said, you can bold that font if you want to pop that out a little bit and make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so lots of things that you can do to kind of customize the report and make it look the way you need it to look. Okay, so let's take a look and see what our report looks like so far so you guys can get an idea of how that looks. So you want to always file save all before you exit the layout because you don't want to lose all this hard work that you've done on this report. And then you want to click file exit. Okay, and then once you have done that, always print preview reports. So I'm actually going to modify the criteria some so that hopefully I get some information in this good old demo database. We'll do active accounts only, contracted, and I do actually want to add the criteria to have that CSR included. Okay, so I'll choose that servicing roles, and I'm going to add criteria because I've put client service rep on my report, on my layout, and I want to be able to filter by that information as well. Okay, so this would be a situation where maybe you're going to set up those reports to go out to individuals. Okay, so let's print preview and see what we've got. Okay, and here's another thing that will get you. Okay, you'll notice that there's only one policy or one person on each page. You have to, anytime you add a major sort, check for the page break. So in this case, yes, I probably want a page break in between each CSR on an expiration report, but for something like a lookup code, if you have a page break, your report will be 480,000 pages long. So you want to make sure that you check that page break for any time you do a major sort, because a major sort will do a page break each time by default. So let's go back into your layouts. by default, there we go, okay, it will, right down here in the bottom left-hand corner, it will by default select page break, okay? So normally, just me, myself, and I'm a little too quick to get through things sometimes. And I'll get in there and I'll run the report and I print preview. And as soon as I click print preview, I'm like, oh no, I forgot to change that sort and make sure that it wasn't page break. But you can add, additional major sorts too. So if you wanted to maybe sort by the CSR and also by the producer, if there's a situation where you want to sort by producer and also see certain business they have and their totals by PPE, you can do that. That's how you're going to use that major sort. So if I wanted to see a breakdown of, all of Bob's business with travelers, and I wanted to kind of separate out their business for each carrier, I'll use two major sorts to add those two sections. So each time you add a major sort, you're going to get this section, which is going to show what you're sorting by, and then you also get a footer. So this is really neat too. Very important to know that in your footer, you can add totals for those sections. Okay, so for example, if I only wanted a total of, Bob's policy annualized premium, I can put that total in this servicing roles footer, and it'll give me a total at the end of each CSR section. Okay, so and here's another tip and trick. A lot of times you can just draw kind of a box over this, or you can just right click on it and copy it. And you can actually paste it right up into that footer, which is really neat. So if you have totals that you would like, maybe the totals are at the end of the report, but you want a total for each section, which is, maybe either each CSR, each producer, you can just copy that total and paste it into the section above. And it'll give you the information just for that CSR or producer, whatever you have major sort by, it'll give you a total just for them. So that's another thing to keep in mind in your report layout. You can copy and paste and basically reuse, information and those fields that you already have in the layout. Okay. All right. Some other things that you have in this area, and I'm actually going to minimize my presentation here for just a second. We like to make sure that we get through all of these areas and you get as much information as you need, but we already went through this. I also want to point out that in the layout, it's very beneficial to add a label for whoever's going to get the report. So there's some other, when you're getting a report, you know what the report's for because you ran the report and you've got the comments for the report, but you also probably need to tell somebody else what the report is for. So in that case, you can actually do insert, this tab right up at the top. You can select label and you can click down in here and draw a little box and type in information about the report. So to fill this in, you go down here to text in the format field and type, here's your expiration report. Make sure make sure you renew your policies. Okay. And so then you've got a note that's actually to the person that's receiving the report, which is going to be really helpful anytime you have those automated reports going out. They might be getting, 3 or 4 reports a month or a week. Who knows how you have it set up eventually, but they're kind of looking at them and they're like, okay, I got another report. What's this for? Or if you're new to reports and reporting in Epic or new to the system at all, they might get a report and just not be familiar with that format, not be familiar with how to use it. So it's a great way to provide some instruction to the users that are receiving those reports. Also, make sure you update your report description. So if you have a report that's expiration report for the next 90 days, come down here into the text of the label and add that information in. Okay. All right, good deal. So we'll go ahead and move on into how to schedule the reports. So let's jump into your delivery options. Now, there are several different options that you have for running the reports, delivery of the reports, and saving the report to your computer. And let me pause for just a second. I see one question that came through. The question is, can the individual pages be emailed to different people? Example, 4 CSRs on one report with each receiving their own page, or must I set up 4 separate reports? That is a great question and a good segue into delivery options. So, good question, Patricia. So, yes, you'll have to set up 4 different reports, but once you set those up, you can schedule it and forget it. Okay, with the right criteria, you can set those reports up to just automatically generate on a monthly basis, or a weekly basis, however often you want those to be generated. And once you set those up, they're good to go. So let's take a look at some of the options you have for the report, excuse me, for delivering those reports. Okay, so the first thing you want to do when you're getting ready to schedule a report is make sure that you edit your specific user options for delivery. You definitely don't want to have that coming to you in addition to everybody else. So let's get out of our layout here and go into those delivery options. Okay. So here, by default, it just shows you as the current user. You've got method is print, local printer. Who prints a report anymore? I don't know. So you can double click or click your pencil to edit on the left-hand side to open up and edit your user options. This is imperative anytime you're going to schedule a report to be delivered to someone. Okay, so I'm going to backspace the printer completely. So we'll just highlight and click the backspace button. And then we're going to select notify only, because we're going to generate these reports from our My Reports, and somebody else is going to be getting the report. We don't want that report to be also running on our computer, us getting a copy. Now, of course, you can, if you want to get an emailed copy of the report, you can leave yourself as a user here. Just make sure you back out that printer option if you don't want it printed, and then type in your email address here. So for users in the system, you'll see once you select a user, there will be an email address listed based on their employee account. Okay. All right, so when we are delivering to someone else, nope, actually, let's save that notify only, and we are wanting to schedule reports to be delivered on a regular basis. We're going to add them as a report recipient up here at the top. Okay, you're going to search for the recipient's lookup code. So let's try Brian Stamper. Okay, it's going to pull them in. And then again, you're going to have to back out that printer. Now, if their email is set up properly in their employee file, then you will be able to select their email address here. And then you decide how to deliver the report to them. So are you delivering the report in a PDF option? Do you want it to go out in Microsoft Excel? And generally the CSV is not used as much. So normally it's just going to be that Excel or PDF option. Okay. So once you select that option, you can click finish and you can add additional users. If this is kind of a team that will need to be receiving the same report, you can certainly do that. But for this purpose today, we're just going to add one person. You're going to need to enter in a subject. So this would be something along the lines of expiration report, maybe something the same as the label of the report. And then you can also set up a message if you want to add in a message here as well. Okay. Now, once you have selected who the report's going to go to, and you put in your subject and your message, remember this is what's going to go out every time the report gets delivered. So once you've done that, you would come over here and set up your schedule. Okay, so if you want, you can set this report to start on the 1st of the month, next month. We generally recommend set a time that's overnight, mid-morning, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and you want to set those scheduled out for a couple of minutes apart. So try not to have all your reports running at the same time. Just so they all get their place. But you can schedule this out. A lot of times I see them scheduled either on the 1st of the month. You can also set recurrences for every weekday. So I have agencies that will schedule maybe an interface report or a download report to go out every weekday. But you have lots of different options here that you can set up for recurring reports. We always recommend schedule reports that you're delivering on a regular basis because that saves you time, and you don't have to constantly be wondering, did I run that report? Did that person get what they need? There's no need to have to worry about that. Always schedule a report if it's going to go out on a regular basis. Things like your expiration reports, new and lost business reports. Maybe you have an activity report that you need. So anything that you're doing, like I said, on a regular basis, set that up to just happen automatically. Set it up, set it and forget it. Okay, so I might do that one on the first day of the month. But keep in mind that your criteria is very important here. So your date range criteria is going to be very important to running the report as well. So if I was looking at this is an expiration date, and I want to run the report based on the next 90 days, I'm going to have to select the option for system date plus 90 days, because when the report is run, that's the system date. So today is a system date. If I run the report right now, it's going to run it and give me everything for the next 90 days. Okay. You cannot schedule reports to run on a fixed date range automatically because they're always just going to run on that same date range. So if I wanted to look for, just the 9th through the 10th or, the 1st through the 10th, I'm not going to be able to see that information in a scheduled or an automated report. You want to run it on the system date or on the new relative date range. Okay, so the relative date range is really cool for those of you who may run a new business report. You can do this based on last month. I can do minus 1 month and minus 1 month. And it's even going to show me the information down here at the bottom. Okay, and it's going to say, if you run this based on this criteria, here's what you're going to get. Now, in the past, we're kind of stuck running it based on the last 30 days, but now with this new relative date range, which is so cool, you can look at an actual month. So you can look at the whole month and not just the last 30 days. So if you haven't experienced that feature yet or tried that out it is a feature only of Epic 2020. If you haven't tried that yet, definitely check that out because it's very helpful for, again, some of those reports that you're running on a regular basis. Sometimes there's 31 days, not 30 days. So that's very helpful for reports that would be set up like that. Okay. I have a quick question over here. The question is, can you review criteria or line effective and expiration dates for how to get a complete book of business? Oh, great question. That's one of my favorites. And every time I do it, I have to speak it. So because it's hard to remember. So it's going to be, so what her question is, how do I get a current book of business? So in the book of business report, you want your policy effective date to be the fixed date range, and you're going to do open through today. Okay, so open through today's date, and your expiration date is tomorrow through open. Okay, so open to today, and then tomorrow to open. Okay. Right, good questions. How do we set the criteria to automatically update for expiration reports? So I kind of just talked about that. That is going to be those date ranges right here. So you want to make sure that you run it based on a system date if you have the report scheduled, and that will set it up so that it'll go out for the next 90 days or 120 days, whatever the case is there. Good questions. All right, last thing I want to get to on scheduling reports is you cannot make a change to a report if it has been scheduled to be delivered. You do have to cancel and purge that report. So once I set up that expiration report, if I make a change here and maybe I want them to look at 120 days instead of 90 days, that's not going to change the scheduled report. You do want to make sure you go to procedures and jobs, management and jobs, and you'll find your scheduled reports, and there will be a list here of all of the reports that are scheduled to be delivered. You have to actually cancel those reports out before you can change it and reschedule the report. So that's the process if you have to make a change to those reports. You'll want to cancel them and schedule them out, schedule a new report basically. Okay. Well, we are coming up on our time. I have one last point here, and I want to make sure I get any additional questions. If you guys want to type in some questions, I have just a couple minutes left if anything has come up. But I do want to point out that you can also deliver your reports via Quick View. And in the report Quick View on the home screen, this is where those reports would be. You can deliver these for users. A lot of times folks like to put an expiration report there, but it's important to know that anytime you run a report from that area, it is only based on the system date. So if you have an expiration report that you've delivered via Quick View, it's going to run based on the system date plus 90 days. So if you run it today, you get it today plus 90 days. If you run it tomorrow, you get it tomorrow plus 90 days. So that's important to remember there. You can do that simply by, yes, I'll save all my changes. You can do that by clicking Actions at the top of your screen here and select Deliver as Report Quick View. Okay, so that's for any time you want to deliver a report that you want folks to basically be able to check anytime. Maybe things like missed renewals, active accounts with no active policies. That's a way that we use a lot of times for CSRs to be able to check their own stuff, on a regular basis. But you can certainly deliver reports as Quick View for anyone. They just need to understand that you're only going to set those reports based up on a system date or that relative date range, so that because it's running based on today's date in real time. Okay. Do we have other questions? Sorry, I got so much information in there for you that it just got right to the end real fast. I hope everyone has enjoyed the presentation today. I hope you got a good overview of what you can accomplish by taking advantages of all the reports resources in Epic. In the few minutes we have left, I just want to see if anyone else has any questions. I'm going to look at some of the ones that have been sent in. Thank you guys for coming, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, Lauren, it looks like that's about it for questions so far.
All right.
So thank you, everybody. Gosh, Lauren, thank you for a great presentation, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. Hopefully, you're going to take this content and get a little bit more adventurous with your reports in Epic. As we said, please feel free to reach out if you do have additional questions. We have the consulting email here, consult@kitetechgroup.com. You can email us your questions. If you'd like to schedule a complimentary consultation, you can do that as well. We'd be happy to set up some time and just talk to you about what your agency needs are and see how we can help. As we mentioned earlier, on Monday, you will receive a follow-up email that will contain today's recording, so be on the lookout for that. And just a reminder to please take a minute and complete that survey. I know Lauren and I both would really appreciate your feedback. So thank you again to everybody for spending time with us today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Bye, thank you.